Quale risenimento di Atheist, Antidote Show.
Now for a needle of truth in a haystack of lies, another segment of the think tank.
Cook said, in the 6 years I worked there, I never had to kill a lobster. But how they do it, a place in the shell where you just stick it in there and it kills them. It cuts their nervous system. The girl was like, "Yeah, that's disgusting." So a few minutes went by, and I was like, "I shouldn't do this." I said, "Ashley, I heard you concerned about the lobsters." She said, "Yeah, that's horrible." I said, "Can I just ask you if you're pro-life or pro-abortion?" I said, "I'm pro-choice." I said, "No, I mean, if you're pro-choice, you're pro-abortion ultimately." And she said, "Well, what about the cases of rape and incest?" Of course, which is the go-to argument. And then I said, "Well, that's less than 1%. And then I stood there real quick and while she was standing there, and I Googled it, and I showed her real quick, under 1%. I had the stat readily available. After having these conversations for so many years, the only thing people say are the same half-dozen arguments, which has just been recycled. So within seconds of everything she said, not that I'm this amazing orator or not that I'm this amazing debater, it's just that she had nothing that I hadn't already worked out to a science as far as how to...
Right.
And she kept coming at me, and of course, these were all pat talking points, so I knew the answers to all these things. She's like, "Well, it's her body." I said, "Actually, how many bodies do you know that have 2 heads, 4 arms, 4 legs? There's actually 2 bodies in there, and you're taking away someone else's right to their own body, so that argument doesn't hold up." And she kept just throwing these weak, like they can't live on their own. I said, "Well, what about a scuba diver?" I said, "Does that mean if I go scuba diving with someone, I can kill them underwater because they're dependent upon someone else to survive? They're not breathing on their own." Or she said, "Well, what about if the baby doesn't have a good life and the parents don't love them?" I said, "I think you'd be hard-pressed to find someone, given the option between a life that's not so great, an actual life where you can make your choices and you can be who you want." They pick life, if you gave them this choice.
Yeah, sure.
And she said, no, they wouldn't, and started crying. And she came back later and she said, some people had a really tough life and their families. And I said, "But Ashley, that's, even if that's true, which I'm sure it's true in a lot of cases, that doesn't mean that these children who are stripped of the right and the ability to live a life would choose to have a tough life and ultimately overcome that and have no life at all. We're not even giving them the choice. We're just robbing them of any chance that you could even have. Just because you have a tough life doesn't mean you couldn't ultimately have a great life."
Right.
I try to avoid some of these conversations because they're so tender. Have you noticed?
Yeah. I will say this. I talk about some serious macro issues on a regular basis. With abortion, I stop being civil. I do not feel that same obligation when I'm talking about abortion. Because we've allowed abortion to be categorized in the same category as just these civil disputes that we have. No, it is not a civil dispute. It is full-on genocide. And that it troubles you to look at that genocide is not my problem. That's your moral problem.
Yeah,
if
I
that
agree.
brings you to tears, because who's the innocent one? The person that I made cry or whatever because they had to look at the fact that they're dismembering a baby? Well, I prefer to fight for the innocent victim of the crime, not the feelings of the perpetrator of the crime. So I've changed my mind on this. I don't think this is a place for us to wax poetic and dance all over the issue.
I didn't even feel the obligation to apologize because I never said anything unkind. The only thing I did was state my opinion in evidence. I never said, "Well, you skank, you murderer, you hoe, anybody who killed someone's a whore." I never said anything personal because that would defeat the point of a discussion and an argument like that. They present their argument and then you refute their argument and you give your own version of it. But there's so much emotion involved with that one.
There is. And the conservatives shriek from it because of that. I think they do. They don't speak.
They don't seem like a bad guy or a cruel person. And the truth is, the last time I had this conversation was very similar. A girl was upset that a pregnant woman was drinking. Tried to bite my tongue as long as I could. 10, 15 minutes went by. She was 22, 21. And I went up to her and I said, I heard you talking trash on the girl that was drinking. Are you pro-life or are you pro-abortion? Well, I'm pro-abortion. Do you not see? And the same thing with this is I was hoping that they would say, of course I'm pro-life. Of course I'm pro-life. How could you not be pro-life? I just made an argument that it was wrong to kill a lobster. I just made an argument that it was wrong to drink while you're pregnant. Why would I be pro-life? That would be hypocritical of me if I would have made that argument and then I would go around and say I don't care about this perfectly innocent, child being murdered. But of course that's not what they said. Women can compartmentalize nothing, and this is the one thing women seem to be able to compartmentalize. It's all overlapping. Except with this, they haven't even thought it past, what they were taught in high school.
It goes to show you the power of propaganda. Because what they really, when they say I'm pro-choice, that's not coming from a gut conviction place. That's coming from I feel the temperature of my time place. That's coming from I know the social consequences to being otherwise. That I truly believe that. Now, for some women, it might be like for legislators and people who are out there lobbying Washington. These guys are dyed in the wool. They believe in the issue. But I think for the average 16, 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old girl, it's all about the propaganda has saturated the society. So when you hear that issue, what are you supposed to say? They roll through the Rolodex. They're like, pro-choice. That's the right answer. Pro-choice.
They always correct me like I misspoke. Like I'm uneducated and I chose the wrong PC phrase. Are you pro-life or pro-abortion? Oh, you mean pro-choice. No, I mean pro-abortion. I'm choosing my words carefully. That's exactly what it is. You're the one who's misspeaking. No make-up response of pro-abortion, which is exactly what it is.
You're pro-murder. You're pro-dismember baby from the womb with vacuum hoses. And, sometimes when I'm in it, I just get into it because that's what's happening.
And that's what was hard for me to bite my tongue is because the way she so graphically described the murder of the lobster, the killing of the lobster. The funny thing is we ascribe all these sentient being thoughts to these inanimate objects, or these animals, which are, they don't have any self-awareness. Disney did a number on us and convinced us that every animal is, Bambi or Thumper. And I'm not saying harm animals for the sake of harming animals. That's wrong. Any kind of cruelty is wrong. You want to stand strong in your animal rights stance. That's fine. I have no problem with that. You can make a great argument for that. But the problem is where you're arguing from. And then to go around and not have any valid arguments to be pro-murder, to be pro-abortion, is what shocks me. You spend all this time thinking about why the lobster shouldn't get. But what about a child getting knifed through the neck?
It's just a moral wire crossing. You can see it so clearly. What is meant for good is twisted and contorted. It's just time and time again, it's a choice issue. I'm always shocked that the left hasn't rebranded the whole thing because by calling it pro-choice, it's almost like the hypocrisy of the left is so overwhelming that the populace has to be a complete moron. Choice is the exact opposite of what the left wants in every area of life. They don't want choice in education. They don't want choice in media outlets. They don't want choice in opinion. They don't want choice at all, except for when you want to murder a child.
The branding is pro-choice means liberation, modern thinking. Pro-choice means you're liberal. Pro-choice means you're open-minded. Pro-choice means you're compassionate. So they're not going to give up all those cookie jars that they have their hand in.
They've rebranded so many times in the past when it doesn't work for them. For example, they called it global warming for a number of decades. Then all the facts said, the globe's not warming. Then they just switched. So they're obviously willing to trade in the lexicon. It's been really shocked that they cling to this choice thing because it really makes the rest of their policy look unbelievably hypocritical. I don't think there's a political movement in history that hates choice like the left. The left hates choice. They don't like choice in unions. They don't like choice in labor. They like centralized power. Choice is an enemy to the left. They don't like choice in consumerism. Give me an issue.
As long as you choose, and this is redundant, as long as you choose what they think you should choose. But the truth is the whole umbrella of liberalism, of socialism, of Marxism, of communism is to change what we have here, which is a Judeo-Christian free society. So all these things, ultimately, no matter how they market them or try to sell them, come to removing the freedom of the individual and giving the power to a select group who have a very liberal ideology, or maybe they're even throwing liberal bones because they know that that we behave like animals. So the carnal stuff appeases us while we're getting our freedoms ripped away. But under the umbrella of them stripping us from our personal religious freedoms.
Visit the Atheist Antidote YouTube channel and follow him on Facebook and Twitter.